Hello, and welcome to Chaos to Clarity. And I have my dear friend Ann West here who is going to be sharing with you all her story and just like some nuggets of truth, what brought her out of the chaos, what chaos looked like in her life, and what were the things that actually brought her out into the clarity she lives in now. So, without further ado, my friend Ann West, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Leonard. I'm really glad to be here. And I think, I was thinking this is probably the most exciting time in history
Yes,
to be alive.
I agree. Absolutely.
And as a nation, we've gone from chaos, and yet I think we're coming into clarity.
Yes.
And just as you see it in a nation, it's true in our personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, we start out with chaos and try to find our way. I wanted to read something I think that really helps me when I'm in the chaos to remember.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
When I was going through chaos, I wish I'd had this information. So I wanted to start out with the positive. And I realized that a lot of my life was ruled by fear. And fear was at the root of a lot of my behaviors. I was looking at service behaviors, but I started looking behind those things, and the root was fear. So this Psalm 139, many of you have read it or heard it, but
I read it this morning, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Well, I love it in the Amplified and the Passion Bible. And the Passion is wonderful. But I just wanted to start at verse 13, Psalm 139:13. Because a lot of times we go through hard times and we're thinking, where did this come from? Who's attacking me? You're blaming other things. But it helps to get centered in how God views your life and what he's already done ahead of time. Psalm 139, verse 13. For you did form my inward parts. You did knit me together in my mother's womb. I'll confess and praise you for your fearful and wonderful, for the awful wonder of my birth. Wonderful are your works, and that my inner self knows right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being formed in secret and intricately and curiously wrought, as if embroidered with many colors in the depths of the earth, a region of darkness and mystery. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, and in your book all the days of my life were written before they ever took shape, when as yet there were none of them. And what I've realized is that God has a book of life for each one of us. All the days are already written. We think they're accidents and surprises and things like this. But God, the sovereign God, looked over our lives. Before you were even born or put in the womb, the book of your life was written. So it's your book of destiny. You have a book of destiny. Our job is to walk and begin to read that book and find out and walk out what that destiny is. So we're here for a journey of discovery.
So here's a question, and this is just because I'm wondering and thinking to myself, so are you saying that even the trials and tribulations that you had in your life were also written for you to walk through?
Yes, the court, God allowed all of that because, and this is probably, well, I think what I've had to realize is it's my responses to life. The Lord knew your family of origin and what you were faced with as a child really kind of determines a path for you. And so we all have choices of how we're going to respond to life. And I started out with fear of people, fear of what was going to happen in the future, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. And so I put up a facade around my life of pretending that I didn't have those fears. But they all leak out in various ways.
But they were really in your heart.
They were in my heart, but I didn't want to acknowledge them.
Right.
So I just pretended that I was confident. I pretended, that I felt secure. I pretended that I was successful, and I just did it as a performance orientation. So many people that you see are performers are really just performers.
So I was wondering, Anne, just so that our viewers can understand how this relates to their own life or how it can relate to their own life. Can you tell that a little bit about your experience in tangible terms so that they can understand what really happened? Like what,
Yeah.
just a little segment of, obviously your life contains a lot of years and many experiences, and you have children and you were married before. I understand that. So can you just give us a picture of what it looked like, just so that people in the audience can really understand and relate to what it is that you were going through?
Well, I think, by the time I hit high school, I was a majorette. I was voted most popular in school and many other activities I was in. But inside, I was empty. When I went off to college,
Wow.
I did the same thing. I joined the sorority, the best one on my campus. I became an officer in the sorority. I did my school, and I lived life on the surface.
So, you said
I
something.
didn't have genuine relationships. All my relationships were superficial.
Right.
And they were. I just tried to live my life in control. I tried to control my life so that I wouldn't be exposed.
So let me stop you, because you said something and you just kind of like brushed over it. But a lot of people in this world think that being socially popular is a really amazing thing. And so really you're giving me just a little insight into your life. So when you were in high school, you felt that you had socially arrived.
Yeah, on the surface.
Right.
But I didn't have in-depth relationships. I just had surface relationships. And so when you're not real and when you're not genuine, you don't get the feedback or the satisfaction you get from intimate personal relationships.
So can you go a little bit more and can you explain that? Like, how is it that you were so popular that you were voted, to be the most successful person in your high school, which I think is a great thing. I mean, it's not bad. But you also realize that you weren't really being honest and vulnerable.
Well, I'm not sure what your question is.
So you said you were Miss Popular.
Yeah.
But you also are telling yourself that you were not very vulnerable, that this was a surface level. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this too. In my family, I performed. I tried to stay out of trouble. I tried to see what everybody else was doing, and then I judged my actions according to what they were doing. They got in trouble, so I just didn't. I figured how to work around it. So I didn't get into the trouble that they did. I wanted to learn from their mistakes. And so I spent my life trying to avoid conflicts and trouble.
Yeah.
Because then I kept myself intact because everything was based on performance.
So you were the nice girl.
Yeah. I was fun and funny, but superficial, superficial. And I just tried to do what I could to get along and to make myself look good. And I didn't even think I was going to mention all that, but
you know what? I think that's very important because that's one of those things that we may esteem as good in life. Right. That here, you get good grades, you do everything well, you look really good on the outside, you're Miss Popularity. And you're saying that was absolutely not being honest with your soul.
I didn't have a clue. When I graduated from college, I didn't have a clue who I was or what I wanted. And I did child welfare work when I first got out of college. And one of my clients tried to kill me. I was working 2 counties. I was the only child welfare worker for both counties. Wow. She followed me home one night and tried to run me down an embankment.
Oh my gosh. And that's pretty severe, though.
It was very severe. And that's when I really meant business with God. I prayed all the way home. I lived 30, 40 minutes from my office.
Wow.
And I prayed. It was at night, and she just kept running into my car. And I was just...
Oh, my goodness.
And I just prayed. And I just drove around until I made sure I lost her before I went to my house.
So you had somebody follow you.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, their goal was to kill you.
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh. Well, what a wake-up call. What did that do for you?
Well, it drew me to God because I realized that, there had to be more to life. I thought I was going to change the world through welfare. I thought I could be the greatest worker. But Child Protective Services, they're a
Wow.
horrible organization. They really are. And so that I couldn't stand it. There was so much paperwork. I didn't really get to help the children. I was shuffling paperwork and shuffling children, but I didn't get to have any impact in their lives, really, except
Yeah.
moving them from place to place and that kind
So
of thing.
would you say that God showed you that that was not authentic and real? What you thought was the picture of your being like
Meaningful
a
life.
good person and impacting people, but really God showed you that no, that's not really what I mean for you.
Well, I always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I really did. And I became a Christian when I was 5, I guess. I invited Christ into my heart. But then I just, and I performed all the way through elementary school. I did all the good little Christian things. I put little tracts on people's doorsteps and things, And then,
You're
of course,
still nice. You're still nice.
well, when I got into college, I put all that aside, and I just thought, well, I need to party. I don't want any of that, So I just put all that aside, and I didn't want to be a missionary anywhere, I just.
Oh my goodness.
That's why I went into social work, because that was kind of a compromise. But the incident with the lady when she tried to kill me drew me back to church. And I went to church one night and met
amazing.
these people, and I had partied with them in the university.
I cannot
And I
imagine you as a
can't believe,
partier.
I know, I was still nice, but I couldn't believe the change in their lives and the joy they had.
Wow.
So that was when I really surrendered my life to Christ. And I went into Christian work with an organization that worked on college campuses, and I worked with them for 7 years. Still performing my heart out. We had forms to fill out about how many people we led to Christ and all of that. I was performing my heart out
Wow.
for God and for them. And
So you would even call that performance?
oh, absolutely.
Wow. You're really telling on yourself today, Anne, and I'm shocked.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, of course, I was sincere. But, when some of the students would see me on campus coming, they'd run to the bathroom and hide in the stalls. Because I was really wanting to get those numbers up, So, anyway, I wasn't real or
Right.
authentic. And,
So what made you kind of finally get to that place in your soul where you really acknowledged in reality what was happening and the Lord took a hold of you, to really show you where you needed to go, and the fact that you had been in pretense all that time?
Well, you know what? I think I didn't. I was with that organization for 7 years, and then I traveled nationally with them, doing things
Wow.
with women's groups, and we had a congress for 100,000 people. So I was the women's coordinator for that. So
Right.
I was busy all the time.
So you were
I
like,
didn't have time to think, but I knew there was something wrong inside of
Right.
myself. I knew I was empty. And I was not authentic. I wasn't myself. And so
Right.
what I did is I married someone that embodied success, that I thought would be very successful in life. And he had a heart for the world, and I did have a heart for the world in
Yeah.
Christianity. But his was performance Christianity too. I didn't know it. And
but of course it makes sense, because if
two performers married.
your heart is resonating with sometimes I will share that with women in my mentoring class, that frequency,
That is exactly
that's
right.
where the level of your connection to God was, being a performer,
That's right.
and you were not letting him get into your spirit and your soul like really deep.
Yes.
Then you were attracted to someone that mirrored your soul.
Yes, he was goal-directed, very gifted, very brilliant, and he wanted to be president of the United States. But the tragedy is, both of us were empty on the inside, and
Right.
he got caught up in homosexuality,
Wow.
and he
That's
was very
amazing.
verbally abusive to me, and And I'd perform harder, and it was never enough.
Yeah.
Never enough. And so I lived 28 years with never enough. No feedback, no love. And I went through cancer. I lost
Oh my
both breasts to
gosh.
cancer. And I went through cancer by myself. He wasn't there for
You
me.
have such a deep story.
Yeah, and I didn't know it, but
Wow.
he was getting exposed through his work with some of the students that he had tried to.
Right. But
involved
you know
with
what?
it,
What
so.
you're doing is also really, if we just focus on your part, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't focus on him.
Right.
But a lot of times, the women in my class, they are actually focusing on blaming someone and talking about someone, and they come to me with the marriage issues. And what's really interesting and fascinating is that many times, it's not happened just once, twice, many times, I've also talked to them and said, but this is what I see. And I see their part. This is what God's showing me, because the Lord, yes, showing me what the other party's doing, but the most important thing that we can know as women is that we're not victims.
See, and that is what.
I feel like we should do another show because I
Because-
feel like you have so much to share. But maybe
I made myself the victim.
okay.
Out of the performance, I made myself
Oh,
the
my
victim.
gosh.
And what I have to say, in going through the cancer, that wasn't my fault specifically, but I had roots of bitterness in my marriage. I was angry that I wouldn't express that anger.
Yes.
So I think it affected my body.
Yes.
And made me vulnerable
absolutely.
in that way. So I would say that the greatest thing I have learned, and through all of this, is when I read to you that your days are written before there was one of them.
Uh-huh.
God didn't lead me into the marriage, but He took that decision I made. He knew that was going to happen.
Right.
And He worked it for good in my life. And everything I went through, even there's a whole lot more, but
I know. I can tell.
but what I see is that was part of my journey into becoming real and authentic. Because I didn't have anywhere
wow.
to turn. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I was alone. When I went through the cancer, we just moved into that
Right.
community. So I was by myself, and he just worked. And so he just left me. And so I had to make my way, deal with my own anger, my own insecurities, and my own fears. So what looked like terrible really has been the key
Wow.
to my freedom and to open doors and to my finding my identity and becoming who God created me to be. It's given me a life message, and everything I went through is a part of who I am, and it's brought me into great freedom and great joy, great peace, because happiness isn't rested on what you think of me anymore. It's centered in Him.
That's amazing.
He's in me, I'm in Him. I disappear in Him that He can appear in me. And I have joy. And I see people through new eyes, not in trying to please them,
Right.
but in loving them. And when I see people, I see who God has given me His eyes to see who He created them to be. So my assignment is to call that forth in them. So I work on the college campus right now. And so when I see the students, I see who God made them to be. They don't
Yeah.
acknowledge God.
I feel like I'm your student too.
yeah. Well, you know what? And that is something so amazing, because when I see you, I see what God created you to be. I see the destiny on you.
Right.
It's like God opens up the book of your life to me, and I see
Yeah.
you. And I say that to the girls. I said, it doesn't matter what you look like. I see you. I see who you are. I see who you were created to be. And you're amazing.
Wow.
And all of this has made me who I am. And all of the things that have happened to me have been the key to unlock the door
Right.
to my destiny.
Right.
Because now my eyes are not on me. I'm seeing the world in a whole new way.
Right. Well, I'm captivated by your story because to me, there's so many layers.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's good for us to share with those who are watching that this can be, it could be your life. You know, being in the pretense, being in the people pleasing, not being authentic. Like you spent a lot of years in that chaotic life, and I would actually like you to share more about it, but we don't have that much time today. But what I wanted to ask you is if you had a verse to share and you can explain a little bit, because I am captivated by your story. I feel like I should just shut up and listen because I feel like there's a lot of wisdom and there's many layers and the facets of what was your chaos that you had created on your own.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, many layers. And now what you have is a lot of clarity about who you are, a lot of clarity about your purpose in life. So let me ask you a question with the time that we have left. If you were to focus on one thing that you want to share with everyone, and then just bring a scripture to mind, especially because we know that the Word of God is invaluable, that they might even forget your story, but they won't forget the word that you connected to your story. Mm-hmm. Can you share with the audience, like, what is it that you would leave them with today? And then we'll probably have you back because I know your story is very deep.
Well, yes, I had to leave my ex-husband. That's another story.
Exactly.
But I was homeless and went on another journey. But
you were homeless?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
For another day. You know, I stayed with friends, but I didn't have a place to live in.
No, I understand that. That is being homeless.
Anyway, that's another story. But there's two verses, I think, that have really helped me through a lot of things. And I memorized them in the Amplified. And it's one is 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love. Dread does not exist, but full-grown, complete, perfect love, God's love for you, expels every trace of terror. For fear brings with it the thought of punishment. And so he who is afraid simply has an immature understanding of love. We love him because he first loved us. So love is not, it's not us reaching out. That comes as a result of the love of God for us first. It's the love coming in first, and the love goes out because.
Right.
So it's just a give and take.
But you had experienced love yourself and really understand the depth of what that love is before you actually loved other people genuinely.
Yeah. Well, I had to love myself first. Yeah. First, I had to know that God had forgiven me for everything I had done.
Yeah.
And that unconditional love and the release from shame and guilt and condemnation released me to love in ways, that I'd never known before.
Yeah.
So
now I understand what it means, that the way that we title the show, because I asked you, what would you title it? And it's your journey from the place of being in fear.
Yes.
All those years to completely coming out of that through the love that God had for you.
That's right. And his provision for me every step of the way. Every time I was in a crisis and knew God would send somebody to help me in miraculous ways. And the other one is in Hebrews 13:5. For he, God himself, has said, I will not in any way fail you, nor give you up, nor leave you without support. I will not in any degree leave you helpless, nor forsake, nor let you down, or relax my hold on you. Assuredly not.
Oh, wow.
And those two verses have really been powerful. Plus, realizing in Psalm 139, even when it looks like there's chaos and no direction, that's my key, my open door to freedom and to maturity.
Yeah, and for our viewers,
I just come back to the cross and say, okay, God, I surrender my fear. I surrender my anxiety. I just surrender my right to have things my way. And I trust you.
Yes, and I just was going to say,
because of those verses.
So for those who are listening to her story, the chaos looks differently in everybody's life, but she was an example of someone who looked nice, who pleased everyone, right? That even had popularity, right? So you had that peace with men, which is sometimes, a lot of times, something that people are seeking out, and yet it's empty at the end when they do not have an authentic love for themselves that comes from the Lord.
That's
Right?
Yes, and you can have money. I would have money, and then we'd lose it, And so I had to learn how to be content
Yeah.
with whatever state I
Right.
find myself in, and feel like everywhere now I go, I'm on a mission. I'm on an assignment. I'm here because the Lord has an assignment for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are
absolutely.
assignments. I have, I'm mom to many people, and so
Yeah.
I just
She's one of my spiritual mothers.
well, my job is to love them to life.
Yes.
That is it, and to be a cheerleader
Amen.
and to encourage.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, thank you so much, Anne, because I really hear in your story layers and layers and layers of being able to relate your story to other people. Because if they can hear themselves in your story and then hear the chaoticness of your life, then they can relate to that place that what I talk about in my story, which is surrender. You actually get to a bottom and you just go like, the first time that we looked up into heaven was from our knees. And that was literal, not just something I make up.
Yeah.
It was actually when my husband and I got to a place where we really, really understood that we could not any longer try. Because our trying was getting us into messes, trouble. And our trying had created such a awful life that we had to live separate from one another, and then we had to spend more money. We had to hire therapists and counselors. I mean, it was ridiculously expensive. That's just my life story with my husband. But I hear that in your life, you came to an awareness. And I want to end this show with this very, very popular verse. Who is he that condemns Christ Jesus? More than that, who was... Oh gosh, this is bent. Who is raised to life is at the right hand of God, is also interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? And that's it. That's it.
Yes, and every time I came genuinely,
The
preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.